Hello and welcome to the Atlantean Archive. Today, got a great treat for you. Somebody I've wanted to talk to for a long time. And as a matter of fact, when I started this channel, I was going to intend to do some interviews, and I had the first person pretty much lined up immediately. I want to talk to someone who will be a familiar face to those of you who, like me, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area in the 1970s and 1980s. That's Mr. Dick Dyszel.
Hey,
Uh,
70s and 80s in Washington. Oh my gosh, what an exciting time. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, and bad television. No, I shouldn't say.
yeah. Corrupt politicians and everything else to go with it.
I was just looking at some old clips. When we do live shows, I prime the audience with old clips.
Right.
And there was one where the Countess, and that's the Count we're talking about back here behind me. Count Gore was talking on the phone, and he's ordering a bag of cement, and that bag of cement is being sent to the White House. Why would I send some cement to the White House? So that Jimmy Carter can cement his relationship with Congress, of course. Never mind. The problem with that is it just totally set it in that time period. There's not much you can do with it afterwards. So.
Oh yeah. It's just a throwback. People have to understand that they're dealing with that time. Oh my! So you were at WDCA Channel 20 from, correct me if I'm wrong, 1972 to 1987. Is that right?
That's correct. June 10th, 1972. I drove I drove past the station 3 times because it wasn't on River Road. It was actually down along a side road along the railroad tracks in what looked like an abandoned warehouse.
Oh, jeez.
And I kind of walked in, and there is this reception area, except the carpet is kind of torn and put together with duct tape.
Oh, wow.
The wallpaper's coming off the wall, and the receptionist, Judy, is sitting behind a switchboard with one of these things where she's plugging things in like a 1930s bad film noir thing. Like, what do I got myself into?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You have to understand that I had just quit a job in Paducah, Kentucky. Now, admittedly, it's a small market, but it was a brand new facility, all state of the art. I mean, brand new equipment. Everything worked beautifully. It was beautifully decorated. It was just a great atmosphere. And I walk into this hellhole. I mean, this this refuge behind the Roy Rogers. It was No, it was a junior hot shop at that time. But that's
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, you'd have to be wondering what you got into at that point. So, yeah. Just get us there. Most of the people who find this will probably have some familiarity with you, but a lot won't as well. And even those who do know you from Count Gore or whatever, they may not know much about your life. So just tell us a little bit about your background and, kind of what put you on the path to TV.
Wow. That's a question that I keep revisiting every time I look at old photos. I have always had a very great interest in radio and television. When I was a little kid, I had a TV in my room because we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, and my bedroom was in the dining room, which is where this little 9-inch television set was. So this is the early 50s. I had my uncle Ben was a TV repairman. He was all into electronics, and he gave me all these Christmas presents, little electronic kits, crystal radios and stuff like this. I just was fascinated. By the time I was 7 years old, we had a reel-to-reel tape recorder in our house, and I was making little radio plays with my friends, and we had a great time with this. It kept going on like this, and I kept really this interest. I wanted to visit TV and radio stations, and something is going. Oh, there it goes. Okay, maybe it's my computer. Never mind. All right. Anyway. The bottom line was, 1960 rolled around. WLS radio came on the air. Rock and roll radio hit Chicago, and it was great. This is Chicago I grew up in, and there was this guy named Dick Biondi who did the late night or 9 to midnight show. He was kind of the wild Australian crazy guy, and I just loved it. And I just, he just died. And I never got a chance to tell him how important he was to my career, because I think if it hadn't been for him, I probably might have lost interest. When I was in high school, I tried to start a radio station at the school. That fell apart. I bought a little book, little green paperback, said how to get into television. I said, well, how do you do that? So I read it, told all about all the different positions there were in a TV station. And at the end, it said, and by the way, if you don't know anybody that's working in the business, forget it. You can't get a job. So I threw the book away. I mean, seriously, if you don't know anybody, that's it. So I gave up on television. I went into mechanical engineering in college and failed miserably because I had no aptitude for mechanical engineering. As a matter of fact, as they were throwing me out of college after 2 quarters, the advisor, by the way, they didn't advise me before I failed. They advised me after I failed, which I thought was very strange. He looked at all my stuff. He says, you have no aptitude for this. I said, well, what do I have an aptitude for? He said, verbal persuasion. I said, well, what's that? He said, well, you can become a used car salesman or an insurance salesman. Well, I like cars. So anyway, the bottom line was, that's when fortune came my way. I didn't want to go to Vietnam, and I was right there in that draft group. And I had my deferment because I was in college, but I was going to lose it because I was thrown out of college. So I had to go back into college. And the only college I could get into without any kind of entrance exam or was the local community college. So I went there. Fortunately, the local community college was, again, part of the Chicago City college system, but this was a night school. During the day, it was a high school, it was Bogan High School. And at night, they had all these professors from all over the city, from all these big schools who really liked teaching, and they liked small classes. So I'm taking these classes where, these guys are used to halls of 500 people. Now they've got 15 people. And it was more of a conversation of learning. And it was great because one of my professors, Professor Moldenauer, who was a speech teacher, I took a speech class. And before I know it, I was on the debate team and all this. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I always wanted to get into TV. And I told him the story about the book. And he said, why don't you just go to school? Well, no one ever told me you could do that. Where do I go to do? He said, well, Southern Illinois University has this big radio and television department. It's probably one of the best in the country. And it's right here in Illinois. I go, oh my God. So I went to Southern, got my degree in radio and television, and then kind of meandered my way through a variety of things, from being a rock and roll disc jockey to being a reporter, to being a news editor, to being a news announcer. And then the big news came when my general manager of the TV station I was working for came up to me while I was getting a drink during my radio shift while the radio record was playing. I go grab some water. And he says, Dick, I want to talk to you about being Bozo. Huh? And I said, yeah. Well, I've been a Bozo on this bus for a while. Let me get back to my record. Anyway, the bottom line was they were going to do a live Bozo show, and they wanted someone to play Bozo. And I said, I didn't want to do it. I said, I don't like kids. I like clowns, but I had long hair. I had a nice handlebar mustache. I wasn't going to give up all that. Then he started talking money.
That'll do it.
Okay. That extra $5 a week, that's when $5 was a lot. So anyway, the bottom line was Paducah was one of the great things that happened to me, because it was the radio station was a 50,000 watt rocker. It was a daytime. All right. Anyway, the bottom line is everyone got to do everything. I was a rock and roll disc jockey in the morning, and then I'd go home for lunch, come back, I'd do a live Bozo show, an hour live Bozo show in the afternoon, go home for dinner, come back, and go as a reporter to city council, board of education, or follow the police cars around, whatever the case may be. Then come back and write up the news, And then on weekends, I would be the 10 o'clock TV news anchor. And then at 10:20, I would get out, I would throw it to the sports guy, and I would have 10 minutes to run into the bathroom, change clothes, put on my tux, put on a cape, paint up my face to look like a vampire, and do a hosted horror movie live every Saturday night. And then on Sunday, we would do personal appearances for which I didn't get paid. So it was a lot of fun. Anyway, so that's my thing of into television. And then I got burned out real quick. I was putting in about 100 hours a week. I finally ended up having to quit. I'd gotten married. I had nothing really to do with it other than the fact that I wasn't seeing my wife any. I quit and said, when I come back, I want to do Bozo. I went to Larry Harmon Picture Corporation and said I did a good job in Paducah. I mean, the show was huge. And so they said, okay. So anyway, they had this opening in Washington. It was like almost, they wanted me immediately. And I said no. So we negotiated 3 weeks. And like I said, on June 10th, 1972, I showed up to do Bozo. And then we did Captain 20, which I wasn't excited about. And then I really wanted to do a vampire, and they wouldn't let me. And but I finally talked them into it.
Yeah, look like.
But what the smart thing I did was, as soon as we made an agreement that I was going to do Count Gore Duvall, and as soon as we had it down in paper, I wrote up a little letter and I took it to the program director and I said, Jim, I want you to sign this. And it was a letter acknowledging the fact that, one, I created the character, I own the character, I own the rights to the character, I own the intellectual property rights to everything I create for the character and everything I present on the station. And they signed it. I own it.
Smart move. Yeah, that was a good move.
I beat George Lucas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is 1973.
Oh, geez, yeah. So, when was it at Paducah that you were MT Graves when you were doing hosting there?
Yeah, the story behind that is kind of a funny little story. The TV. I went to work at this radio station. They had a construction permit to put a TV station, the first UHF station in that part of the country, on the air. Mm-hmm. And everyone that worked on the radio station was getting a job at the TV station. And one of the things, everyone was asked to do things. One night, the TV station was almost ready to go on the air, but they're looking for these movie and program opens. You know, you'd buy a package of the 8 o'clock movie, the 10 o'clock news, and all. And so they would send these 16 millimeter reels out of demos. And this was like 2 a.m. on a Friday night. We had just gone through about a case of beer and a lot of pizza. Myself, the general manager, and another news guy. We were feeling no pain, and up comes this thing on the screen saying, "Night of Terror with MT Graves." And I took a sip of my beer and I yelled out, "That's what we need! A horror movie with the host." I was just joking around, and Lewis turned around, our general manager turned around and said, "You're hired." I said, "What do you mean I'm hired?" He said, "You sound just like a horror host, so you got it." I said, he said, "Besides that, I know you have a cape." And it's true, I was the only person in Paducah with a cape. My girlfriend made it for me. It was the early 70s. Capes were cool.
Yeah.
So MT Graves, I didn't know there was really an MT Graves. He was the horror host in Miami. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. And how long had horror hosting been a thing by then? Because I know that, most markets had one at the time.
Well, actually, it's funny you should mention it, because I do a thing of the secrets behind horror hosting when I do conventions. And the first horror host was Vampira. And she was in Los Angeles in 53, 54, that fall, winter. She was the first. She had this incredibly small waist, and she was dark haired and very exotic looking. And it was really an interesting concept. But it only lasted a year, and then it went away. Horror hosting actually came into its own in 57. That's when Universal Screen Gems released the Universal horror films. and they called it the shock package. They didn't release all of them. They released a package of them: Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, the basic ones. And they called it the shock package. And because these films are short, they're like 60, 63 minutes, maybe 70 at the outside. They recommended that maybe they be hosted to put it into a longer framework, so you had some space to sell commercial time.
Right.
Because that TV was out to make money. So that's when they came about. Every market had a shock theater or some kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then you would call upon the weatherman, the sports guy, Miss Romper Room, or maybe the general manager's current girlfriend, whoever it was. Hey, come on, host a horror movie. And they'd be creative about it. And that was the start of it. That lasted until the mid to late 60s. That's on the VHF stations. And by that time, they didn't really need cheesy old horror movies because they were now profitable enough to get stuff from Hollywood. But used were just coming on the air, and they needed cheap programming. So they bought the cheap horror films that the V's were no longer using. And guess what they did? They went to the weatherman, the sports guy, and Miss Sally from Romper Room and said, hey, host our horror movies.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah, because I know when I was reading your bio, it's talking about wearing so many different hats there. You were doing all sorts of stuff. They had you doing Bozo and then Captain 20. And a lot of people nowadays, a lot of younger people especially, they're not familiar with the old kids shows, the old kids clubs from independent stations and all. What was that like? I mean, just describe that real quick, kind of that aspect of what you did when you were Captain 20. What would you do on those things?
Well, Captain 20 was a strange animal because he didn't have a show. He was a drop-in. He would drop in at the end of every program, and we'd pre-record these, and he'd say, hey, kids, I hope you enjoyed Bugs Bunny and all his friends. Next up, we have Ultraman. Hey, and we're going to have a contest, so stay tuned. It was just that kind of a thing. There was no, and then during the program, we ran these contests, and they went from anywhere from gerbil races to monkey races to Disney character races. Eventually, the big one was where we had a Channel 20 club card where kids would send in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we'd send them a club card, for which we gave away 200,000 club cards. Yeah, we have college students on weekends going through these huge bags of mail, stuffing these self-addressed stamped envelopes with these club cards. And each club card had a unique number, and we had it in a big drum, and we'd pull a number, and that kid could win. And the first prize for our big contest was Christmas in Disney World, and I got to go.
Yeah.
I got to go twice. We got to go to do the promos. We shot them. Disney provided us with a 16-millimeter film crew, and we spent 2 days running around the park, making fools of ourselves and having a great time. And then so we did that, and then we got there for Christmas when they went with the family, and it was a great time. It was kind of funny because no one knew who Captain 20 was down in Orlando. So I'm in this Martian costume, this green lame suit with purple hair, and the Disney crew was out there, and we're standing in front of the park, and they didn't know what to make of me. Who is this? Why are we doing this? They didn't know anything, and they were just. And then I was just standing there minding my own business, and suddenly two families, huge families of kids, they come around me, Captain 20. Oh, you're here! This is great. This is better than Mickey Mouse. Yeah. And the film crew is going over there. Maybe we're onto something.
yeah, seriously, yeah.
So that was Captain 20. But you're right about one thing though. People don't understand local television anymore, whether it's kids or adults. And I think that's the closest people could get a feeling for that would be to watch a Today Show in the morning, where they have the pictures of the people outside.
Right.
And they take the camera out and they talk with the people. That's what early television was like. People like to see themselves on television. I mean, they didn't have YouTube. They didn't have Facebook. They had a TV station. Everyone tried to get on their TV station.
Right.
The secret of Bozo was having a studio audience of 75 to 100 kids, because guess what? When it was their turn to be on television, they stayed home from school. Mom and dad stayed home from work. Aunts, uncles, cousins all stayed home. And what were they watching? They were watching that show, because little Johnny or Sally were on the show. And it built an audience, and it built kind of a unique loyalty, because, wow, I was on that TV station. Now you have a vested interest in that station. And you don't have that anymore. You don't have that the kind of loyalty. You have a loyalty to maybe your Facebook page, or maybe your YouTube account, or maybe your TikTok account, whatever. But to have this universal thing in this one town where everyone knew about it, it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that I really missed too, because I remember when Channel 20, I guess they'd been trying to sell the station for a long time, apparently, since the late 70s. And I guess they had some issues with that, from what I understand, that it finally went through in 86, and that's when they axed everybody, including...
Actually, that was the second time. You're right. The first time was in the late 70s. Milt Grant, who was one of the founders and one of the co-owners, wanted to get out, and he sold it to Taft Broadcasting. So Milt moves out. Taft Broadcasting comes in and dumps a ton of money to build a brand new, really big, beautiful, state-of-the-art studio. The secret is, and it finally came out, they were going to build a network, something like Metro Media had at the time, which was kind of like something like Fox now. It was just a conglomeration of stations that they owned, because now companies were able to own more and more stations. It used to be limited, and then it expanded. So Washington was going to be one of the hubs. It was going to be where they were going to have their news operation there, because the capital's right there. So they built these studios. They had huge satellite dishes to sending it up to the other Taft stations. I was actually brought in kind of undercover to work with the Taft corporate, to come up with a syndicatable kids programming. We did a pilot called Kids View, and it could have really worked well. But unfortunately, by that time, we were into the late, it was 83, 84. And there was, this was a time when there were a lot of companies doing leverage buyouts. They didn't have any money, but they were leveraging who knows what to get money. And this group, TVX Broadcasting, finally bought the station. And then that's when they said, basically, we could run the station on 39 people. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was it. The funny thing was, here's the irony. The man behind this his name was Tim McDonald. And he, at one point, was a program director at Channel 20 when the Count was first getting started. And he actually, on his own, carved the tombstone we used at the beginning of the show.
Oh, yeah.
But he gave us the tombstone, and in the end, he ended up canceling the Count. So.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah. So I was reading about that, some of the history behind all of that.
But that's okay. Yeah. It was a tough time. First of all, whenever there's a change of station, and I don't care if it's radio or television, or change of business. I mean, you probably know. New company comes, they want to play with it their way. And so the fact that I survived the first takeover was really kind of amazing. And all right. So anyway, there was tough times. People got fired, and I got out, and I left the TV business. I went into starting a mobile DJ company and spent the next 25 years doing weddings, bar mitzvahs, parties, and doing fashion shows. Nothing like being paid to provide music for beautiful women in fabulous clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it. And you're not doing the DJ stuff anymore, right?
No, I decided I got tired of schlepping big speakers and a gear. I wasn't getting any older, uh, and I wasn't handling late nights that much anymore. So I never really was a late night person. So I said, nah. And then when we moved to Florida, I said, I'll just sell off the equipment and I'm going to just enjoy life with the Count.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely had an online presence there. Now when did that start, the weekly web program online?
Weekly web
98?
program, July 11th, 1998.
98, right. And you were the first horror host to go online, right?
That is correct. I was the first horror host online. We couldn't stream because we were using dial-up.
Oh yeah.
So we did a text. The first 6 months it was text and pictures. Then I found a widget in early '99 that would allow me to highly compress audio. So I then started going to conventions and doing audio interviews with celebrities.
Yeah.
Then in the late 1999, Real Media came along with little 160 by whatever it is video, highly compressed, and we started doing hosting. We didn't start hosting movies right away because movies I thought were too long. I didn't think that people would watch a little tiny screen like this for 2 hours. So we started doing serials, Flash Gordon in particular, 20 minutes. Yeah, people can do that.
Yeah.
And then I'm always been technically, interested and knowledgeable. So we kept up as things moved along. I kept going along. We got better servers and faster connections and higher resolution stuff, and we just keep chugging along.
Yeah. So tell people who don't know, what do you do on your website right now? What kind of content do you have on there? Do you host movies on there?
Yeah, initially I wanted to be a portal for all things horror. Something like Dread Central is right now, or there's a variety of well-organized national portals for horror. I didn't have enough connections to do it, at least particularly at the financial end. So, but it's a narrative. You go to the website. I call it a web program because it's more than just a website. At least I think of it as more of a enhanced program. So I have a video. I explain what's going to happen for the show, and below are some text things. We have reviewers who review books, to look at a little bit of horror history, review DVDs. We have had, we've had contributors of all sorts from all over the world, literally over the years. Basically, right now, and we do movies, but I also do shorts. So what we do is, like, say, last Saturday, okay, I had a non-public domain movie because this is my anniversary year. I went to a friend of mine, Don Glued, who's a producer in California. And I said, can I have one of your movies to host? And he said, yes. So I'm doing Tales of Frankenstein. So that went on last Saturday night. It'll be on for 2 weeks. 24/7, you can go there and watch it. You don't have to look at a particular day or time. But this coming Saturday, I will have a new short film in addition to that. That'll be on for 2 weeks. So every week there is either a new feature or a new short, and they're always continually rotating in and out. And then we do promotions for various events. I'll be doing a live hosted movie in October 28th in Silver Spring. I've got another conventions coming up in Irving, Texas in November. So we do that. What else? We have a contest. Right now we're having the cheesy outer space movie contest. It's all about cheesy outer space movies from the 50s. And then we give away usually DVDs on that. I do sell product. I do sell the movies that I host. They're all public domain movies that I do sell. We do have autographed pictures and T-shirts, stuff like that. So that's all included in there. We'll look at some bizarre stories from the news for that week. Some of them are really strange. Some of them are just strange, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, that's what we do.
And the creature feature set, when you were at 20, did you design that? Did the art department work with you? Did they tell you what you could do with it? Or how did that happen? How did that set come together? Because it was really good, that dungeon set you had there.
Well, the dungeon set started off as two flats, 4x8 flats that were left over from another TV show. I think it was a teen dance party from the late 60s. And our art department came in and they painted them gray. And then they just outlined them with, they were big blocks of stone. Mm-hmm. And then when we went to a bigger set, we just added more of those flats. Then I said, you know, back in the prop room, there were these doors. I said, why don't we have doors for the dungeon? And they said, okay. So it just evolved over the years. The coffins evolved. The first coffin was a pauper's coffin, I guess we call it. It was actually the cheap pine box. Unfortunately, pine softwood. Screws don't stay in there, especially when they're doing this with the lid.
Yeah.
And the lids are not designed to be opened and closed a lot. You know, it's like open, close, bury. Okay. Yeah. So after about a year, the wood coffin fell apart and we couldn't repair it anymore. So I finally convinced the general manager to let me buy a metal coffin. And that's when I learned the secret of the industry. So I go down to this coffin place, funeral home, whatever. And I said, I want a coffin. They happen to be fans, so they were working with me. They said, we'll let you have it at cost.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So I'm looking at these things and it's $1,500, $2,000. I'm the kind of guy who goes into the petty cash for $5 to get dry ice for the set. You know, come on. So I ended up buying this black coffin with this red interior. It was $1,500, and I said, I can't afford that. He said, well, what do you have it cost? I said, what's cost? $125.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That's what I found out about the markup.
Yeah. That's a healthy profit there.
I'm in the wrong business. But even that one, because they were spot welded, we ended up actually having to get a welder in it and put heavy duty welds on some heavy duty hinges so the top would. We're doing a Halloween show, as a matter of fact, and we had a special set. One I loved. It was just a coffin. It was in front of a black background, except we pulled the background up so it went up like this, and there was a white curtain, so it almost looked like this flowing thing like this. And then we had a row of 4-foot tall candles, which are actually mailing tubes with little tea candles on the top. And they came out and we trucked the camera down through the candles and we opened up the lid. It was just beautiful, except I opened up the lid and the lid fell.
Oh, no.
I do have that outtake.
And these were live. So
no, actually, this was tape. No, that is a fallacy. We never did any. We only did one show live. No.
Okay.
We did two live parties at the Bethesda Cinema and Draft House, where we actually had 3 cameras, a remote truck, the whole thing. Yeah. But we only did one show live from the studio. Everything was pre-taped. And I'll tell you why. Because Channel 20 made its money by renting its studio space for commercials. So we could undercut the commercial factories up in New York. So companies would come down to Washington. They'd spend a couple of days in our studios and they would just run through a whole bunch of commercials. And they could do it cheap versus doing it in New York. They'd bring their own talent and everything down, but we had the facility. So the facility was not available to me and other people we had to do it when there was nothing going on. So we didn't do it live, but we taped it whenever it was available.
Okay.
Bozo was taped. All 5 shows were taped on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, I know that. Okay. And the picture, as a matter of fact, right behind you of the Count there, I remember you saying something one time, I think, about that being something a fan actually sent you, right?
That was sent to me by, actually, well, okay, story. You get a lot of mail. Gore got a lot of mail. I got this thing. It says, "Dear Count, my mother wants to make a portrait of you, an oil portrait of you. Won't cost you anything. We need 2 things. 1, we need a photo of you as a model. And 2, I need to give it to you live on the show." What have I got to lose, right? Yeah. So I go through my drawer. I find this little snapshot, little Kodak snapshot. It's kind of out of focus of the Count, and I send it. Forget about it. Ain't never going to happen. A couple months later, get a phone call. "Hi, Count. This is Eleanor. The portrait's ready. When can I come down and give it to you?" Well, okay. She called my bluff. I said, "Well, we have a session Saturday." Okay. She said, "Okay. I'll have my mother drive me down there." She had to have her mother drive her down there because she's not old enough to drive yet. She's in junior high school.
Oh, wow.
But I don't care, hey, if you're going to give me something, I'll take it. So anyway, I'm in the men's room making made up. We didn't have a dressing room. And my director, Stu, comes in. He says, "There is this bombshell blonde out front." I said, "No, she's a junior high school. Not like any junior high school I ever went to." I said, "Okay, forget that. Her mother's with her." "Yes, good." He said, "Wait until you see the portrait." So there it is. I go, "Well, what happens is Mommy is the official portrait artist for the state of Maryland. Lorraine Stauffenherman. She did Spiro Agnew. I'm not sure that's a good thing, but but she did all the official portraits. So here's an official oil portrait." And the whole deal was her young daughter wanted to get into business, into TV and movies and all the rest of the stuff. And so daughter comes on the show, and she, there's a funny line is, we unveiled the portrait, and I said, "Countess, what made you do it?" And she goes, "Oh, Count, my love for you. I would do anything to get on this show, and here I
am." That'll do it. Yeah.
It's been with me ever since. It's my prized possession.
Wow. Yeah.
And
it's very good. Yeah.
And the Eleanor and I became very good friends in spite of our, I guess there's probably about a 15-year age difference between us, but over the years that's become less of a problem. We were both in Alien Factor together. She was the girl who found my dead body after the monster mutilated me. In Night Beast, she was back as my secretary. And by this time, she was fully grown up as an adult. And I mean, fully grown up as an adult, and really a knockout. So we kept running into each other. We kept working. She was a guest on my show a number of times as the Countess von Stauffenberger.
Yes, I remember that.
And actually, when we got into the web program, so we're talking about probably in the late, in the 2002 to 2008, every New Year she would come on, and the running gag was Gore wanted really to, culminate their relationship, and something would always happen, and she'd have to run off or do something. She'd break out in hives, or her phone would ring, and she was very hoity-toity. She was, "Oh, I can't spend New Year's with you, Count. I just got a call. I'm going to Versailles." And we ran that for years and years and years, and it was always fun. Yeah. I still almost every time I get to Washington, we get together, and have drinks or
Yeah.
dinner or lunch or something.
Right. She's an author too now, isn't she? I remember she.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I moved it to my other bookshelf. Yeah, she writes historical horror of sorts and fantasy. Her one of the things was Sex with the King, where she looks back at famous women who were mistresses of kings of Europe. Off with Her Head, I think, which is her current one, which is about famous women who lost their heads because they were having affairs with various rulers.
Yeah.
She had one about the mistresses of the popes. Eleanor is incredible. She's a linguist. I think she speaks 6 or 7 languages, and she can translate these. She actually went into the Vatican archives to actually research some of this stuff. Yeah, and she has a very good writing touch. She keeps it. She'll take a head off with a bit of humor. So I thought it was really good.
Sounds like there. And I remember your last appearance, I think, on 20 was they brought you back for the Countdown with the Count, right? In 1999.
Wow. You've done your research. Yeah, that was a surprise. We had just started the web program, so it was coming up on the December 31st, 1999. Yeah. That was an interesting challenge. They really treated me well. I was living in Chicago at the time. They flew me back. We met. They had no one that knew how to run cameras or do audio because they weren't doing any production. So we did quick lessons on how to do simple things. We brought back some people that I had worked with me that were former crew members, cameramen and audio people. And they came in and worked on the show. We brought on a lot of guests, and we did Countdown with the Count, just like we had did before. And it was a moderately successful program. It was a lot of fun to do. But that was my last appearance on 20. And like I said, that was, we started off the new century with the Count.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I was watching that night. I remember they advertised that. They actually did put some advertising into it before they did it. So that was good.
I know that. But I have to admit, the commercials weren't any better. Let's see, it was a pawn shop. That was one of the a mattress company. Hey, we'll take any money and take anybody's money.
Oh yeah, oh definitely, yeah. No, I won't keep too much longer here. I remember you did have some other guests on from time to time. Did you have Forrest J. Ackerman on one time? I seem to remember him on there.
Yeah, that's an interesting story behind that. All my stories are interesting stories.
Yeah, they are,
nothing ever happened to me the way it was, planned. I've lived my entire life ad-libbing my way through it. It's like, so here's the story. We're going into this session. We have we do 4 movies, and one of them is The Brain That Wouldn't Die. And I get a call that morning from a fan of mine who's kind of involved in horror beyond just movies, into books and stuff. And she says, well, hey, Dickie, Forrest J. Ackerman's in town. I go, who? I don't know Forrest Ackerman. I'd never read Famous Monster magazine. I'm sorry. Flog me if you must, but I didn't know who he was. She says, well, I want him to be on your show. And I said, well, fine. We're going to do the show later this afternoon. Bring him down. So she said, I'll bring you some cheat sheets. Okay. So here comes Forrest J. Ackerman, and I'm faking it like I know who he is. He brings along this first issue of Famous Monster magazine. And I'm pretty good at ad-libbing things. I mean, I learned very early in life that the best way to interview someone is to let them talk and then listen to what they're saying and then pick up on that and follow that thread. So you don't have to know anything about anybody. And I'm pretty good at it, to be honest with you. But anyway, so we're on the set and we're doing 7 segments of this. And so I'm asking him questions, and it worked out okay. I mean, he picked up on the fact that I knew nothing, but he was very a gentleman about it. He didn't make fun of me or whatever. He just kept going. This was good. He mentioned that we saw Vampirella, which is, I have Vampirella, a poster of Vampirella in the lid of my coffin. And he told the story of how he created her as part of a comic book series. So yeah. Forrest, it was probably one of the best. It was the best series of interviews within one program that I've ever done. But I always felt guilty afterwards because I really should have known who he was. So whenever I saw him at a convention, I would kind of steer clear of him because I just, I felt like I cheated the guy. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I didn't realize that he was the creator of Vampirella along with them. There's a comic book store in our area where they actually have a full-size cutout of that character, the same one that you have on the lid of the coffin. And it's kind of funny. I don't know her from the comics. I knew her from Creature Features. So that's where I got that from.
Well, as the Count would say, it's the only way I could get her to come down on me, All right. All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that, by the way, the poster was a gift from a fan.
Oh, okay.
We had some kind of a contest. You send a prop. If you use it, I give you a T-shirt. And it was the poster. And then I said, "What can we do with this?" And the art department said, "We've got some foam core back here. We'll post it up and put it in the lid of the coffin." Bingo.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Get creative.
Never threw anything away.
Okay, yeah. Is there anything you can think of just right off the top of your head that maybe longtime fans of Creature Feature or people who just might have be interested in what life was like in independent broadcasting back then at a station like 20? Anything they might want to know of interest?
Well, it was loose, but there was a lot of creativity. We were young, we were stupid. In limited cases, we didn't know what we couldn't do or what we could do. My program manager, at least Jim Reed, my first one, he gave me a lot of latitude. I would walk up to him and say, Jim, I want to talk to you. I think it's something I'm going to do on my show. He said, I don't want to know. I said, you don't want to know? He said, no. He said, I want plausible deniability. You ask forgiveness later. And that's the way we did the show. I once went to him. What do I know about ratings? Ratings are numbers in a book. Oh, well, look at this. What do they mean? So I finally was really, really frustrated because when you're working in the studio, there's no audience. Matter of fact, Gore didn't do live stuff until we did two live parties in the 85 and 86. So all this stuff was just me and the crew and the cameras. So I finally went into his office. I said, Jim, I got to know who's my audience. I got to know who I'm talking to. So he pulls out the Nielsen book. He looks at it, leans back, kicks his cowboy boots up on the desk, takes a big drag on his cigarette. Says, Dick, your audience is half female and half stoned. Okay. And I went into the studio every time and I just pictured a bunch of stone guys and a bunch of beautiful babes. And I said, let's go with it. This was the 70s.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That is great. When you mentioned the thing about just do it and ask forgiveness later, that's what happened with your stereo broadcast, wasn't it? Wasn't Creature Feature like the first stereo program because you kind of pirated it?
Okay. Yeah. The Taft had just taken over and we had a new chief engineer and he wanted to get into stereo television, which was a big deal at the time. And even the TV sets that are being sold, a little red light. If the show was in stereo, the red light would come on, and you would know, oh, it's in stereo.
I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so I happen to have one of those sets, and I'm noticing that every once in a while on channel 20, and only on 20, the red light would come on. And I go, hey, we broadcasting in stereo? And he goes, well, yes and no. I said, we either are or aren't. He says, yeah, we're putting out a stereo signal, but we don't have any stereo programming yet. So what we're doing is we have a synthesizer that takes a mono program and breaks it down into synthetic stereo. And we're playing with it. And I said, well, when are we going to come out? He said, well, we're going to produce a program, a special. And we're going to put it on, and it'll be the first stereo broadcast. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any idea when that's going to be? Oh, in about a month or so. So I go to my audio guy. I said, hey, Skip, will this board, big audio board, will this board work stereo? He goes, yeah, if I patch it here and there. It's like Scotty on the Enterprise. Yeah, I can do this. Okay, fine. Yeah. Go to one of my engineers and go, these tape machines, will they record stereo? Oh, yeah, we've been playing with that. I go, okay. So we can take the stereo from that audio board and put it on stereo. Yeah. And I said, what about playback? Well, if we know it's stereo, we can play it back through the main switcher downstairs. And okay, so I'm putting all this together. I finally get this group of people together, and I said, don't tell anybody, but we're going to do the first stereo show. And we did.
Yeah.
I failed to mention to our program director until after it was on the air that it was stereo show and promoted as the first stereo. She was not happy. She was not happy. But that's water over the dam, Sorry, folks.
Yeah.
But it was. I grew up when stereo records were coming in. I used to have. I still have a reel-to-reel tape of a stereo demo tape, and where it had Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet. They're a husband and wife singing duo, and he would be in this speaker, and she would be in this speaker, and she's, oh, let me come over to your speaker, and he said, well, I'll go over to your speaker, and you go. They're tap dancing across like this. I said, well, we can do that. We'll have a train go behind me, starting over here and going over. Why a train? I don't know. We had me swinging on a rope from this side of the studio to that side of the studio, and I'd be doing the Tarzan thing, and it would go over there. Of course, when I got over there, I hit the wall, and there I am, flat up against the wall. We did a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. So I'd heard you talk a little bit about that in the past, but I hadn't had that whole story. So that's great.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun, and they didn't fire me, so it was.
Yeah, anything that doesn't end with being fired, yes.
There were times that I'm sure that I could have been, but it was like. Yeah. Well, we fire him for Gore, but he's still doing Captain 20, and we need Captain 20. And besides that, we'll probably shut the station down, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, when you're wearing all those hats, they're kind of hard to replace at that point. So,
yeah.
Oh, my. So people can follow you. They want to follow up with you, countgore.com. Also, dickdyszel.com. I'll put links to those in the video description.
Yeah, and actually, there's captain20.com for the history of Captain 20, because I was the third one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on my Roku channel, which if you have a Roku, we have my Roku channel, which is Count Gore Duvall Presents. And what that is, beginning of every month, usually it's on the first day, but sometimes because Roku is kind of strange, it may be the second or third day. Mm-hmm. But at the beginning of every month, I put on 4 hosted movies, features, 4 celebrity interviews. Todd Stark, who's sometimes known as the horror nerd, he goes around all these conventions and does a really good job of interviewing celebrities. A lot of contemporary people that I have no idea who they are. And then we have two hosted, really, really good creme de la creme hosted horror or science fiction or fantasy short films. And most of them are national award or international award winners. And that's, so basically, the idea was that if you wanted to emulate Saturday night television, you have 4 movies to choose from. Saturday night, you go to my Roku channel and you can watch The Brain That Wouldn't Die. Hey, why not? This year, we're doing, like I said, a number of producers are letting me show films that are not public domain on a limited basis as celebration for the anniversary, the 50th, 25th, and 5th. So we're that's the Roku channel. Every week we have at countgore.com, and then what else? Yeah, that's it. We're just celebrating 50 years of being Count Gore Duvall.
Yeah, excellent. And you do voiceover work too for hire, I think, on your. Is that right?
I would like to say it was for hire. Okay. Here is the one disappointment in my life. I can do multiple voices. I've been doing multiple voices all my life. Matter of fact, Captain 20's voice initially was that of Maxwell Smart, because yes, Maxwell Smart, Secret Agent 86. I was a big fan of Don Adams. Yes. Anyway, and when we did I've got one Emmy. I won an Emmy for Kids Break, which was a kids show, which you haven't even mentioned, where I was a big green puppet. Howard Hughes, yes, Howard Hughes, a big green puppet. Yes, Kids Break, and we have Captain 20 here with us. Yeah. Now, let's see, we have Madam Memory and Timmy Time. So we have all these little
chef combo too, didn't you?
Ooh, the chef combination, the greatest chef in the entire nation. Ooh, yes. Now that one was that I did get hired for that by the National Dairy Council, but the bottom line was I was so tied to the station that no one would hire me because my voices were on Channel 20, and they didn't want. Oh, here's the real story. Here's what really happened. Remember People's Drugstore?
Yes.
Okay, before CVS. People's had come in and they were going to do this big Halloween spot, and the Count was going to do it. We had the dungeon. They brought in their own people to decorate it and brought in this candy and all that. And it was a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
They took it out. No station in the market would run it because I was on it. They said, we're not going to promote a competing character on a competing station.
Oh, geez.
So that was the first and last time I got to do a commercial.
Oh,
because all the stations just shut me down.
Oh.
So that didn't happen to Willard Scott. I don't
know. He was the first Bozo there at 20, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, he wasn't at 20. He was at Channel 4.
Oh, okay.
He was WRC, and yes, he was the first Bozo in Washington. I met a number of people who said there were just way more Bozos than him on Capitol Hill way before him, but that's
yeah.
Even a couple in the White House.
Where they congregate, yes.
Yeah, yes. I will say one thing though. I used to, when we were in Washington, I used to be able to make fun of every politician, and no one said boo. I can't do that anymore.
Right.
I mean, I once did a joke, because we start off when we do live hosting, I do these monologues. Mm-hmm. And I was talking about how, actually I was talking about the 2016 election. And when Trump was finally becoming a big name. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I was commenting about the fact that you really have to be careful because people are picking up sides. And matter of fact, there was this nursing home, and they had to stop Pinochle. Why'd they have to stop Pinochle? Because, someone would say, what's Trump? And everyone would just throw their cards up and have a fight, So, yeah. When I said that, people walked out of the theater.
Oh, wow.
Okay, you can't do that anymore. So I stay away from politicians now. Besides that, it's no fun because they make fun of themselves. All of them make fun of themselves. So I'm apolitical.
Yeah, for sure. The culture has changed. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, it certainly has. It certainly has. The one thing you hadn't asked about was the Penthouse girls.
Oh, I do remember something about that. Yeah.
Every year, Penthouse magazine in the late 70s and early 80s would send out their Penthouse pets. They were like Playboy playmates.
Right.
And they would send them out to the stations to promote the magazine. Well, they'd come to Washington and they'd go to 4, 5, 7, and 9, and they'd go, no, we're not going to promote a men's magazine. They'd come to 20, and program director would say to me, hey, they got the Penthouse girls up front. You want to do something with them? And I turned to the guys in the studio. I said, pull out the coffin and a couple flats. Bring out a camera. We'll do this during lunch hour so we don't stop anything. And we'll get a couple cue cards and we'll have them do hi. One of them. This I found out a dirty little secret about the Penthouse girls. They were very nice. They were all models. They were very attractive. They came very well dressed. I mean, no skin showing anywhere. They came with chaperones, bodyguard, the whole thing. Generally they were very, very pleasant young ladies. And one of them, though, she was obviously very new. Because she's standing there, and I have this big cue card. Hi, my name is, and I didn't know what her name was, so I just left it blank. And then the rest. So, okay, ready? Okay, just read along here, and everything will be fine. I cue her. She goes, hi, my name is. Cut. What's the problem? Well, there's nothing there. No, you're supposed to put your name there. Oh, okay. We'll take. Stand by.
Yes.
All right. Hi, my name is. Cut. What's the problem? Can you write it in?
Camera shy, maybe, and just knew it. Yeah, I guess.
Well, here's what I find out. Most of them were not using their real names. They were given names by the magazine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And she evidently had just gotten her name.
Oh no. Her stage name, yeah.
Her professional name.
Yes, professional name. Oh, wow.
But one time, I decided I really, really, really wanted to do a skit. I said, I think if we find the right person who's maybe had some acting experience, we can do this. Mm-hmm. So in comes the Penthouse Pet of the Year for 1979, Dominique Moret, and she's just a beautiful woman, a little older than the other ones. And I said, "Would you mind doing a skit with me?" And we'll do it. We're doing 7 segments then. And she said, "Well," I explained to her what it was. Basically, she didn't have to memorize anything. She was going to be the county building inspector, and she would have all her lines on a sheet of paper on her clipboard. So she could refer to her clipboard consistently, and it would be easy. I had the problem trying to remember what my lines were because I didn't have a clipboard. And I had just written this stuff. So anyway, this thing was just loaded with double entendres and all sorts of stuff that was just on the edge. And she was perfect. She just did it, and it was just wonderful. And I really appreciated it, and I thanked her very much. And we didn't have to edit anything out. Funny story, though. This is like in the fall of 79. Summer of 80. Mm-hmm. I'm on vacation. I like to travel. I like to go to different places. I've got 3 weeks vacation. So I'm going to take an exotic vacation. Where am I going? I'm going to Tahiti. Me and Mr. Mitchner over there. So I'm going to the Club Med. Now, the Club Med in those days was really the place to be. It was hot. It was, young people not wearing a lot, the whole thing. Anyway, so I'm there, and I've been there for a week, and I'm in the disco during the day. And then I'm looking at there's this pair of high heels walking around. Everyone's wearing bathing suits. What's this high heel? And I look up, and it's Dominique Moret, dressed like she's in New York. She just arrived. Her prize for being the Penthouse Pet of the Year was a week's stay at the Club Med in Tahiti, where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I turned to my wife and said, "See that beautiful woman up there? That's the Penthouse pet. I'm going to go say hello to her. She says, yeah, go ahead. So I go up to the bar and I go, hey, Dominique, how you doing? She goes, huh? I said, well, you don't probably recognize me because I'm not in makeup. You were on my show in Washington. She said, oh, you were that freak. That cuts me down a few steps.
Yeah, it doesn't remember the name, just free. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so it turns out we ended up getting along for the rest of the week. Although she had her entourage, she had her boyfriend and like three chaperones, and it was fun.
I bet she did. Yeah, I can believe that. Do you before I forget to ask you this, do you read science fiction and horror? Is that something you do, or you just like to watch the shows? Or
Okay, here's a dirty little secret. I like horror. I have always liked scary movies, but I love science fiction. I have always been a science fiction fan. I read, even before I read the Boy Scout Manual, I read H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. 20,000 Leagues was one of my favorite films growing up. Forbidden Planet. Show me something with a rocket ship in it and I'll watch it. If it happened to have a monster, that's even better. So, one of my favorite films is The Time Machine. Day the Earth Stood Still. We just hosted that at the AFI in AFI Silver, our last live one. I like a lot of things, but again, I have read all the David Weber, Honor Harrington books because I love that kind of military science fiction. But I like, a lot of. I don't read as much as I used to because I'm doing so much right now. Before we started this, I was editing some material that I've got to have ready for promos and for other venues for the next couple of weeks. But I've just lost my train of thought. But yeah, I like to read in big chunks. When I go on vacation, I take books with me, and sometimes on tablets, but because I usually go to sunny climates, they don't work so well. So I usually bring books, and I like reading, like 100 pages at a time. If I do it at home, I can get maybe 4 pages before the phone rings, before I get a notice on a text or something, and I'm diverted. And I like to get sucked into the characters and the books and the plots and the stories. I want to become one with the story, and I can't do that if you're going 3 pages and put the book down 3 pages. But
that is frustrating. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you mentioned that. That was one of my favorite books growing up. That and the Sherlock Holmes stories and all that stuff. So.
In 2009, I was in San Diego Comic-Con for the premiere of Every Other Day is Halloween, which, by the way, is a documentary on my career as Bozo Captain 20, and it's just been re-released as a Blu-ray with an updated mini documentary from 2009 to 2020. Anyway, that's commercial. Thank you very much. I'm always told I don't promote myself enough. But anyway, we were in Comic-Con, and after Comic-Con, I wanted to go up to Burbank because I had met another collector of memorabilia, and that's Bob Burns. Bob Burns worked at the studios, but what he did was he collected throwaways that were, the studios didn't want them anymore. The spaceship from The Day the Earth Stood Still, he found in a dumpster. He pulled it out. It's now hanging in his basement, his basement museum, I should say. So you walk in, you see the flying saucer right there.
Yeah.
But 2 real big things. In the corner is the Time Machine from George Pal's Time Machine.
Oh, wow.
Fully restored.
Wow. Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me sit in it.
No.
Well, because they had a mannequin of, what's his name? Who started the film? I'm blanking on that. Anyway, they had a mannequin. He didn't want to remove the mannequin. But As I look across the room, along the back wall is the diorama from Destination Moon of the moonscape with the Earth coming up. But sitting in front of that is the 7-foot long model of the Nautilus from the movie.
Oh, wow.
Oh, then
Wow.
is the smaller one, and then is the smaller one, and then below that is one of the diving suits.
Mm.
I was in fanboy heaven. I mean, I'm going nuts. You know? I'm trying to figure out how can I get one of these into the overhead bin on the airplane.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, geez.
Disney keeps making noise about remaking 20,000 Leagues. Matter of fact, I understand that they were going to do for the Disney Plus channel.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Nautilus, and it was the story of Captain Nemo. This is kind of a backstory, and they cast it, they built the sets, and then pulled the plug on it. They're trying to find another studio to take it up because it's ready to go, but for some reason they don't want to do it. Okay, so I don't know. I can still sit there and watch, as slow as it is, because it is by contemporary standards, the 1954 version of 20,000 Leagues with James Mason and Kirk Douglas, and just love that film. And I can watch Forbidden Planet again and again. I did get to meet Anne Francis.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I said, that movie, I was not quite in adolescence yet, but I watched that movie time and time. I went to the theater many times to see it. She said, why was that? I said, remember that scene when you're walking along with Leslie Nielsen and you're in the pond and you say, hey, why don't you come in? And he said he didn't bring a bathing suit. And you say, what's a bathing suit? And then you come out of the pool. I said, I can't tell you how many times I watched that scene to see what you were wearing. And she laughed.
I bet you did. Jeez, yeah. I had a coworker that got me a Robbie the Robot about this size not too long ago. So it talks and everything. It's great. I love collecting that kind of stuff when I can. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
sounds wonderful.
Again, I just to summarize, I've had one heck of a career. I could never have planned it. I never could have guessed it. I don't know how I could have made it better or how it could have been better, except maybe the voice thing. But even that, I've met a ton of people, and the highest compliment you can get doing what I did is that people just take the time, now that they're adults, and they come up and say, thank you. You entertained me in my childhood. You didn't do me any harm. I really enjoyed it, and this is my daughter or my granddaughter, and I'm bringing her to meet you because you were such an important person in my life. And how can you not be proud of humbly proud of something like that, because you never intended to do that. You just intended not to do a bad job. It's kind of a side story with that. I was at a Raven Con last year in Richmond, and it was Sunday morning, and this guy comes in with a hand truck with a TV set, small TV set, portable, black and white, GE, as a matter of fact, and he's rolling it in towards me. I'm going, I'm dressed as the Count. What's it? And he comes up and I said, okay, you got me. What's with the TV? He goes, I won that TV from you. Captain 20 gave me this television set. And he says, and it still works. I still can watch Channel 20 on it. I said, well, no, you can't, because they've gone digital. He goes, okay, you caught me. But it still works. And I said, well, let me guess. You want me to sign it? He goes, would you? And I said, I bet you want it as Captain 20. He goes, yes. No problem. Thank you. And then he goes on with the story. So I signed it. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing cooler. I mean, when I'm getting old enough now, unfortunately, that I people around me are passing on, and you know, we all have a finite end, and you start thinking about, well, what have you done for all your life? And when it comes down to it, all you can do is leave a legacy of some sort. And I would prefer to leave, and I think I have left to kind of, and continue to leave a legacy that is moderately positive and gives people some entertainment. What else can you ask for?
Yeah, I know people in my generation, you know, people I knew in the Washington, D.C. area, they all knew who you were. They knew Captain 20, they knew Gore Duvall. So they enjoyed it. I mean, you definitely did entertain us, and we are grateful for that.
And I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it. And I'm going to be grateful right now to go have some dinner.
Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time and going through all of this. It's been great talking to you.
My pleasure. And as let's see, as Bozo would say, well, let's see, always boys and girls, just keep on smiling. Or as Captain 20 would say, may you be happy and win lots of prizes, space buddies. Or as a Count would say, may your blood be more. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, then. Have a good night.